Hi guys, it's Alexandra here. Welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to sit down and do the mid-year book freakout tag. I know a lot of other people here on BookTube are taking the opportunity to film this video, and I figured I would jump on board and share with you a little bit about what I've read so far this year and where I'm planning to go with my reading in the last half of 2020. Okay, so the first question is, what has been your favorite book of the year so far? And there's really a tie, I think, at this point for my two favorite books, and I know that we're supposed to just pick one, but considering they're from two very different genres, I wanted to make sure I talked about both of them. The first favorite that I have is Beach Read by Emily Henry. This is a contemporary romance that follows two authors. One of them writes hard-hitting literary fiction, the other writes romance novels, and essentially they end up living in side-by-side lake houses during the summer, and they are suffering from really bad writer's block, and they decide to flip-flop genres and try to teach each other basically how to write in that other genre. It's touching, it's funny, I really enjoyed it. It is a great time. It definitely is an adult romance, so just be aware of that. It does touch on some more difficult topics here and there, especially to do with father-son relationships, but I really enjoyed this book, and I just keep talking about it on my channel because I feel like everybody who enjoys contemporary romance should read it. It's just a great time. The second book that is my favorite from 2020 so far is A Conjuring of Light by V.E. Schwab. This is the third book in her Shades of Magic trilogy. I waited forever and a day to actually read this book, but I am so glad that I finally decided to pick it up this year. It's action-packed, it's full of wonderful adventures. I cannot speak highly enough of this trilogy as a whole, but especially this installment in it. I was never bored. I was shocked at how the adventure just kept continuing and continuing, and it felt important to the plot and not just like random things happening to make it interesting. And there was beautiful character growth throughout this whole series, and even in my opinion, more so in this last book, you really started to see a lot of these characters grow into these very strong people. If you don't know, this is a fantasy series where there are 4 different Londons, and the role of magic in each of those Londons differs. And we have a character named Kel, who is a specific kind of magician called an Antari, who is able to traverse between each of those Londons. And essentially, at the beginning of the trilogy, an object is taken from one of those Londons that should not have been brought out of there, and chaos ensues. It's hard to explain more than that because this is the third book in the series, and if I talked about what happened here, there would be major plot spoilers. But if you're looking for great friendships, romantic relationships, adventure, cool magic, just a great fantasy series, this is definitely one that I would suggest. The second question is, what is your favorite or the best sequel you've read so far this year? For me, I'm going to go ahead and say that Keeper of the Lost Cities Exile is taking that spot for 2020 so far. This is the second book in this particular series by Shannon Messenger. It follows a young lady named Sophie, who in the first book finds out that she is an elf and is whisked away into this new life in a totally new world with new friends and family surrounding her. And in this book, I just really like how the plot very much continues to grow, the world continues to expand. We meet new creatures like alicorns, and we continue to uncover secrets and kind of dive in deeper into this idea and this secret organization called the Black Swan. I talk about this series a lot on my channel, but again, I think it's a great series for younger people because it deals with real life topics in a way that's very accessible, and it's great for adults because it is a little bit lighter hearted while still feeling like it has depth and meaning because it isn't just all fluff. It's a great series if you're a parent or a teacher or an older sibling and you're wanting to read something alongside maybe your younger siblings or your classmates or your children, and you can talk to them about it. It would be, in my opinion, a great book club book for older elementary, early middle school students. It's just, I think everybody would have a great time and be able to find a character that they really connect with in this series, and I just can't sing its praises highly enough. Okay, so number 3 asks, what are the new releases that you have not read yet but really want to? And as I kind of looked through the Barnes & Noble new releases list, there's really only one that struck me as, ooh, I really do need to read / finish that book. And that book would be The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. This is the Hunger Games prequel, and I have started this. I am 162 pages into it. I began this the week that it came out, but I have hit a huge reading slump and have not picked up any book in several weeks. So I really want and need to finish this book. I have enjoyed the first 162 pages, and I am intrigued to see where it goes. I personally am finding Coriolanus Snow's story very interesting. He is a character that fascinated me from the original trilogy because he is so sick and twisted. It is very intriguing to see what happened to him as a young person and how does that potentially connect to who he became as an adult. The next question is, what are some of your most anticipated releases for the second half of this year? The first is Midnight Sun by Stephenie Meyer. This is Twilight told from Edward's perspective. I am very excited about this. I've been a Twilight fan since I was in high school, both the movies and the books, and I'm just excited for the nostalgia, I guess. The next book I'm looking forward to is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I obviously enjoy V.E. Schwab as an author, and I'd heard a lot of buzz about this book on the internet and on Twitter and on BookTube specifically, but when I looked up the plot, it says that it follows the life of this young girl, and it starts off in France in 1714, and this young woman makes a deal where she will be able to live forever, but the consequence is that nobody will remember her, and she goes through life trying to figure out how she is going to leave her mark on the world when nobody can remember her, when all of a sudden, nearly 300 years later, she meets this young man and he remembers her name. And I just think that that sounds absolutely fascinating. Time travel is a cool concept in general, and I think that V.E. Schwab, I'm sure, will knock it out of the park because she is a fantastic author. So I'm super excited for that. I cannot wait to read it. The next question is, what was the biggest disappointment so far? And I think, looking back at my Goodreads, my biggest disappointment is Alone on the Ice by David Roberts. This follows a expedition to Antarctica, and it's nonfiction, and I didn't dislike it. I just think that they spent way too much time kind of flip-flopping between the expedition you think you're going to be following when you pick up the book and other things that happened on different expeditions to Antarctica. And so it's just one of those where I wish they would have focused more on the plot that they talk about on the synopsis of the book. And it is also kind of, I don't know, I was thinking about this book more as I was trying to decide what my disappointing book was. And not only do I think they have too many side plots that they follow, and the names get really confusing. It's hard to kind of keep the different expeditions separate and keep them all in a timeline that makes sense. I think sometimes the plot drags because of that, because you just get to something that happens in the main plot, and all of a sudden you are taken on a totally different path for quite a long time, it feels like, and it just is not, it's not what I was expecting. All right, so the next question is, what was the biggest surprise read? For me, that would be Dead Wake by Erik Larson. Even though I love history, and it's definitely something that I've enjoyed for a good portion of my life, I've never been the biggest nonfiction reader for pleasure. Like, I would not traditionally have called myself somebody who would pick up nonfiction books just for fun. And I decided to borrow Dead Wake by Erik Larson on Libby, which is just a free app that you can connect your library card to and then borrow ebooks and audiobooks on your phone or your laptop. And I started listening to it, and it was just so fascinating. It felt like I was watching a TV show, essentially. And I've talked about Deadwake on my channel, but it essentially follows the story of the Lusitania and the sinking of the Lusitania. So if you enjoy stories reminiscent of Titanic and war history and things of that nature, I think that you'd really enjoy Deadwake. Maybe you like documentaries or historical fiction movies. If you like those things, but you're not really into reading nonfiction books, I'd suggest picking up Deadwake if it sounds interesting to you, the topic sounds interesting, because it does not feel like a textbook. It's narrative nonfiction. You get to know kind of the lives of the people who were on the ship, and it's so much more than just focusing on one particular thing. So it's like, yes, it's about the sinking of Lusitania, but it's so much more than that. And you even get to hear from the perspective of the German U-boat captain who sank the Lusitania. So it's not even just one perspective of the people on the ship, which is something that I love about it. The next question asks, who is your favorite new author? And that could be new to you or a debut author. And there are just a few for me that kind of hit that list, and they are ones that are new to me personally. One is Emily Henry, who wrote Beach Read. Josie Silver would also be one of my favorite discoveries this year, and I discovered her by reading The Two Lives of Lydia Bird. I also discovered Lucy Foley this year, who wrote The Guest List, which is a murder mystery that is a multiple perspective book, which I've talked about on my channel as well. And I also discovered Erik Larson this year. So none of these authors, to my knowledge, are debut authors, but they are new to me. And three of them, Emily Henry, Josie Silver, and Lucy Foley, I actually discovered by buying their books through the Book of the Month Club. So if you're into finding new authors, or you want to, but you're not sure exactly how to go about that, Book of the Month honestly feels like a great way to do it, because they hand select 5 books each month, and then you can pick one as your credit and up to 2 editions. And that's how I found quite a few new authors this year. Our next question is, who is your newest fictional crush? And I don't personally have like a fictional crush from a book at this time, but there are a couple book series that I think have absolutely fantastic relationships in them, whether they be friendships, family relationships, or romantic relationships. So I'm just gonna briefly mention those. So a book series I've already talked about is the Keeper of the Lost Cities series. Like I've said, there's great friendships, great family relationships in there. There may be romantic relationships in the future, but that's not really a specific thing at this point in the series. I also think that the Shadow of the Fox series by Julie Kagawa has a lot of great relationships that are blooming in it. In particular, I am enjoying the relationship between our main characters, who are Tatsumi and Yumeko. The next question asks, who is your newest favorite character? And that was really hard. I tried to be good and just pick one, and really there's about 3 or 4 that are all tied that I could have talked about here. But I figured I would talk about Tatsumi from Shadow of the Fox. So Tatsumi is a Shadow Clan warrior. The reason that I really like Tatsumi as a character is that he has this really gruff and I just want to get to my business kind of exterior, and he has good reason for that, as you find out from reading the book. But as you go through this first novel, you see him open up and you see him grow as a character alongside Yumeko and the other people in this first story. And I just love how much he blossomed, and he still has that sense of character of being very to the point and I mean business, but there's this soft side that starts to open up. I just think it's really realistic to see him change in these small increments, because his whole life he has been trained and groomed to be and live a certain way, and so he's having to break down pieces of himself and really figure out what does his life look like if he isn't following exactly what he grew up to know. And I don't know, I think it's fascinating, and I can't wait to see where the rest of this particular series goes. All right, so the next question asks, what is a book that made you cry? And I will not go into the plot of all of these, but there are 3 that definitely made me tear up more than once. The first is The True Lives of Lydia Bird by Josie Silver. This follows our main character Lydia, who has just lost the love of her life, and she is now having to deal with the grief, and just we follow her as she heals and as she grows and as she learns what is her life going to look like without this person in it. The Fault in Our Stars is the next one. That should be absolutely no surprise. I read this book several times. I cried incredibly hard the first time that I read it, and I seem to cry at different spots each time that I have reread it. And I didn't full-blown bawl this last time that I read it, but there's a few things that just really get you, and I still ended up tearing up. And I promise you I won't keep talking about this book, but there are some things in here that did hit me right in the feels. Let's just say that. All right, so a book that made me happy is the next prompt. And I could list a lot of books here, but one book that I haven't talked about that did make me happy was the 12 Desserts of Christmas by Joanne Fluke. This is a novella in her Hannah Swenson series, and Hannah is actually not a main character in this. She is there and she is a part of the plot, but not the center of attention. Essentially, this short story follows two characters, a male teacher and a female teacher at a boarding school, that are requested to stay over Christmas break with a handful of students who are unable to go home to their parents, and they end up falling in love during the course of this Christmas break. And Hannah, our main character normally, is there delivering treats that she has baked for the kids. And there is obviously a mystery that ensues, but I don't know, this book just made me really happy. I think that if you are looking for a book to make you happy, cozy mysteries often are able to do that because they are just so sweet and full of fun and adventure in a way that doesn't feel stressful or overwhelming. And I don't know, I just hadn't read a cozy mystery in a while, and it was nice to kind of dip my toes back into that genre and into particularly one of my favorite series. The next question asks, what are the most beautiful books that you have purchased this year? And I actually have two, and they are both from Book of the Month. The first is The Guest List by Lucy Foley, and I think the subtle thing that I really like about this is if you look closely, it looks like the rain is actually hitting the cover of the book, almost like the cover of the book is a window and you're looking outside through that pane of glass and it's raining onto that. And I just think that is so cool. I don't know, I love the color scheme of it. And another really subtle detail that I love about this is that you can see the front part of the little ferry boat, essentially, that is used to take the guests out to the island for the wedding that's happening there. So I just think there's a lot of subtle touches on here that make it an absolutely gorgeous cover. The second one that I think is absolutely gorgeous is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. And it is so hard to tell, it is not picking up well on my camera, but this green is an absolute lime green with like tennis ball yellow writing. It is absolutely stunning, and I have not read this, but the plot of this book sounds fascinating too. Essentially, the main character, when she was younger, she lived in this house with her family, and her dad always said that the house was haunted and talked about it and wrote about it, and she never believed him. And then as an adult, she ends up with this house back in her life, and she is now experiencing all of the things that her dad said he experienced, and she is now having to come to terms with the fact that her dad was actually telling the truth, essentially. And last but not least, the last question says, what books do you need to read before the end of the year? There are two main series that I would really like to finish before the end of the year, and one of those is the Keeper of the Lost City series by Shannon Messenger. I didn't want to bring over all of those books because they're really thick and cumbersome to hold. And the second series I really want to finish up is the Shadow of the Fox series by Julie Kagawa, and that is Soul of the Sword and Night of the Dragon. So it is a trilogy, and I've read the first book, and I would like to finish the second and third before the end of 2020. Alright guys, so that is the mid-year book freakout tag. If you did this tag, whether a video or an Instagram post post or whatever it might be, let me know down in the comments. I would love to take a look at your particular tag. And thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified whenever I post new content. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.